Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. Take Omnipod Dash out for a spin with a no-commitment, free 30-day trial. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by Club 1921, where diabetes connections are made.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, a new plan to manufacture and sell insulin at a much lower list price. The company behind it, nonprofit Civica RX, with support from JDRF.
Direct to the pharmacy, no markup. You know, if you need to pay cash, and you can walk in and pay cash. And I think that allows for a transparent, stable pricing of a drug that's life-sustaining to so many people. And it gets me fired up because it's long overdue.
I'm talking to JDRF CEO Aaron Kowalski about what their role is here, how realistic this plan is, who it may help, and a lot more. We also spend some time talking about the reorganization of JDRF and what the future after COVID-19 looks like for them. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I am always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. The show this week is all about insulin. You probably have heard about the plan from Civica RX to sell equivalents to long-acting Lantus and short-acting Humalog and Novolog for no more than $30 a vial and $55 for a package of pens. Civica is a nonprofit generic pharmaceutical company created by hospital systems and philanthropies. It was created in 2018 to make quality generic medicines accessible and affordable to everyone. I have reached out to Civica RX. I hope to have them on the show soon. I have a lot of questions, I'm sure you do too, that only they can really answer. But JDRF helped fund this project, and I wanted to get Aaron Kowalski's perspective. If you don't know, Aaron and his brother both live with type 1. He has his own story about not being able to access insulin. And over the years of this podcast, I've talked to him quite a bit about this issue. All of that in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. Omnipod technology is constantly advancing, and you deserve to have the latest and greatest when you want it. No one wants to be locked into a contract. At Omnipod, they heard this, and that's why they have the Omnipod Promise for users getting products through the pharmacy. The Omnipod Promise allows new and existing users to start on Omnipod Dash with no contract commitment or obligation. Then you can upgrade to Omnipod 5 at no additional cost, regardless of existing contract, when covered by insurance, and get a free controller, PDM, with your first box of pods. Don't wait. Start on Omnipod Dash today and be ready for the latest and greatest with the Omnipod Promise. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and Omnipod Promise terms and conditions, visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. This is really interesting. I'm very intrigued to learn more. Thanks for jumping on.
It's great to be back. It's great to talk to you.
Let's talk about this news from Civica. First, just lay it out for us. Is this really going to be discounted or kind of nonprofit insulin?
It is. And as we all know, in the diabetes community, there's been a lack of significant progress in making insulin affordable and accessible here in the United States of America. It's shocking. And the insulin-dependent community, I think, has been more than outspoken and more than justified in being outspoken that we need affordable solutions. So this project with Civica intends to do that, put a stake in the ground once and for all, make insulin out-of-pocket cost $30 for a vial of insulin, $55 for a box of pens, and no markup, no rebates, take it out of the system, regardless of insurance status. And I think this is a big, big deal.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of questions about it, but I agree with you. I mean, it sounds amazing. This is not the first time Civica has done something like this, right? They have come in and done this with at least one other drug.
They've done it with over 60 drugs. And I think that was one of the things that gave our board, and I think you see this group of other funders and partners here, a ton of confidence that this not-for-profit has come in and really changed the game in generic drugs. Their intention was to really address kind of two big issues: supply chain and price. They've done it through many different hospitals. I was on a Hill briefing last week. I think they said over 5,000 hospitals have touched over 75 million lives, I believe. So they have a proven track record, and that is what gives us a lot of confidence that we're going to get this done and do it for insulin.
Let's break it down a little bit, because for years, there have only been a few people making, selling, distributing insulin. Civica has its own manufacturing facility, and they say they can produce enough for about 1/3 of the market. Did they build this facility? Is this something that was already there that they took over? Do you know?
So there's kind of two components of this. One is we're working with a partner in India who will be manufacturing the active part of the insulin. So that would be the insulin molecule itself. And then that will be shipped to a plant in Virginia where they will package and bottle the insulin or put it in pens. Civica team has been building that plant. This manufacturer has the capability of making insulin already. And you're right, there have been, as we all know who live in this community, three main manufacturers of insulin: Novo, Lilly, and Sanofi. But there are other insulin manufacturers now, as you've seen with like Semglee and Mylar and others. What we're talking about, and this is kind of the twofold objective of JDRF. One is we still want to see innovation. There's still tons of room for innovation in insulins, again, as anybody who has diabetes knows. But our firm belief is after patents expire, the drugs should be competitive and pricing should be competitive and things should be available. And we've seen, in this case, that not happening. That's what Civica's set out to solve. And again, in your question about manufacturing, we've set up a partnership, and through Civica's setup in the United States, we believe we'll have the ability to really put a dent in the problem.
What is the JDRF partnership all about? I mean, we all know the need. I think a lot of people have yelled at you for many years for not doing enough. So what is JDRF's role here?
Well, we provided funding, a multi-million-dollar contribution to this project. I think we're a gatherer of like-minded individuals. So we worked with the Helmsley Trust, obviously the Civica and Civica Foundation. Other friends of diabetes are in that announcement. And ultimately, I'm happy to talk about criticism. I think JDRF, I'm proud of the role that we've played in fighting for access. I think this initiative is really kind of saying that in spite of all our fighting, we still, as we all know, we're not there. And my feeling when I presented this to our board was this provides a clear pathway to help a group of people who are the most vulnerable, particularly those who are uninsured and underinsured. And the challenge for us was JDRF, we couldn't do this alone. We don't manufacture drugs. But what we do well is leverage dollars, collaborate, work together with partners to solve problems. And I think this project is a testament to that. As you saw in our release, a number of like-minded stakeholders gathering to tackle a major, major problem in our country.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I know the criticism that I saw, and we can talk about it. And I got to be honest with you, Aaron, I honestly was a little stunned, but it was, why is JDRF doing with this? They should only be focused on the cure. Because I got to tell you, as someone, and you and I have talked for years, I don't agree with everything JDRF does, but this to me, if it comes as we're talking about here, I don't see how anyone could have any issue with it. This is going to help so many people stay healthy until there is a cure. Have you heard that criticism already from the community? Have people contacted you?
Barely, but it's been something that's always in the back of people's minds when we do work that's not cure focused. I faced that quite a bit when we launched our artificial pancreas project back in the mid 2000s, 2005. And look at where we are now. We're using these systems. Every one of those systems has technology that JDRF helped fund. And I always say, and I said this last time, we need people to be healthy when there are cures. And if you can't afford insulin, you're not going to be healthy. We know this. People have died. They're not mutually exclusive. They're related. And I think JDRF investing to make sure our mission, accelerating life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and better treat type 1 diabetes and its complications, gosh, if you don't have insulin, how is your life? I mean, it's not being changed. It's going in the wrong direction. So to me, this is a no-brainer.
I don't know if you can answer these questions, and we are going to talk to Civica down the road a little bit. What confuses me here is the confusing nature of the American healthcare system. I've talked to all of the insulin manufacturers over the years, and everybody has said to me, no, we can't possibly lower the cost across the board because we have agreements with PBMs and insurers won't do this. They won't cover it in the same way. We can't go around insurance and sell it with just a prescription, although, they do that in many other countries. Can you explain what Civica plans to do to to me, it seems like they're just really going to bust in and disrupt what has been told, what has been explained to us is a very complicated market.
Well, I think, and I'll do my best, we could probably spend days on this topic, how complicated our healthcare system is. I've been working in health policy for, almost 2 decades now. And I have to say that I don't completely understand this problem because it's so opaque and there are so many different steps. What I will say, going to one of your points, we know that in other countries like Canada, insulin is accessible at a low price and it's competitive. I've said that if I went back to college and I had to take economics in college, you would be hard pressed to talk to your professor and have them explain how in the face of competition, prices go up. Defies everything we learn in economics. I'm a biologist, but I did take macroeconomics. Our system has this perverse incentive to drive list prices up because of the rebating system. And JDRF has been very outspoken that we believe that insulin should not be on a rebated system, that they should be an affordable out-of-pocket cost. So to your question, how is Civica going to do this? Well, I think they've done it in their model already. We've seen that payers and hospitals have also suffered for this, particularly with generic drugs. And what Civica said is, okay, guys, let's just do it ourselves. We'll manufacture the drugs. We'll sell them with a not-for-profit markup. So, the only cost that they're charging is to maintain sustainability of the model. And what they've done, as I mentioned, they have many, many hospitals on board and actually payers on board because it's saving costs. So I think what we've demonstrated even in this announcement with the likes of Blue Cross Blue Shields being part of this announcement, Intermountain Health, Kaiser Permanente, that this taking out the intermediaries and directly negotiating with a what we call an MSRP, like when you go to a car dealership, this is what you're going to pay, or this is what we suggest you're going to pay, and we're not going to allow for markups, then takes that whole system and bypasses it. So part of this will be through payers, and I mentioned some of them that are part of this already. I expect there'll be many more by the time we launch. Part of this will be direct to consumer. We are going to allow, and I expect, and the team from Civica mentioned this on a call I was on recently, the Amazons, Costco's, Walmarts of the world, direct to the pharmacy, no markup. If you need to pay cash, and you can walk in and pay cash. And I think that allows for a transparent, stable pricing of a drug that's life-sustaining to so many people. And it gets me fired up because it's long overdue.
I have a nitpicky question, and I don't want to be one of these people who doesn't see the forest for the trees. But when this came out, I thought $30 a vial, which is a lot less, right? It can cost, as quoted in a lot of places, between like $175 and $300 a vial. And I've told the story many times before. After many years of great insurance, we dropped a bottle. We needed a substitute. We had to pay out of pocket. It would have been $300. I was stunned. That was when it really brought it home to me years ago. But $30 a vial, most people, and I guess this is most people on insurance, most people pay a set amount per month for how much insulin they need. So this could actually cost some people more. Are there any options? Are they set at $30 with Civica? Do you know? Because if somebody needs, 5 vials a month, I know that sounds a lot to some of you listening. You're horrified, but you need what you need with insulin.
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. And let me just explain, if you're in a system, so my insurance, I'm very, very fortunate that I don't pay any out-of-pocket costs for insulin. At JDRF, we make sure our insurance covers all diabetes supplies. And this would not impact my coverage. And if you're in a plan where you're getting a fixed amount, payment amount per month, it's very likely that it won't affect that. And it could actually drive that price down. Because ultimately, again, it's so complicated, but your insurer is paying dramatically less than $300 a vial. And hence, they can then allow for a payment of a fixed price per month. And I don't expect that'll change. It could ultimately, this price could be lower and could make the price per month in insurance lower. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kaiser, Intermountain Health, I think they're examples of that. Where the biggest benefit that we see in this $30 per vial is for those people who don't have the benefit of insurance, or what we would call are underinsured. So I, like you're dropping a vial and you have to pay out of pocket. My personal anecdote is my brother, who runs his own business. Successful, does great. He's a very talented guy, but it's small. It's a small company. So his health plan for a while was a high deductible plan. And I may get this number wrong, but I know that it was more than $10,000 a year for his deductible. So for him, even as a successful person, I mean, that is $10,000 out the window for diabetes supplies that once you kick over that deductible are being covered at some, much lower cost. And that is dramatically more than the insurance company is paying, which is grossly unfair. In his case, on a high deductible, he would not incur that huge, out-of-pocket cost. It'd be a tiny fraction of that. Similarly, as we know, there are a bunch of people who are uninsured who need insulin. And they have to walk into the pharmacy and either figure out some way to scrap by, make terrible decisions on rent or a car payment or insulin, or as we know, a quarter of people in the United States are rationing insulin. And in that case, we'll see a dramatic improvement. So I don't expect that your payment, if you're insured, will change at all. And hopefully that will continue to go in a better direction. And furthermore, it'll help the people who need it the most.
I'm curious, and this is a little bit of speculation, but Civica being so open about everything, I wonder if we might get the answer to a question that a lot of people have been asking for a long time, which is how much does it actually cost to produce a vial of insulin, right? We have this range that people talk about. I've heard everything from $1 to $7. But do you know, will Civica make that public what it costs them?
What I can tell you is that cost for the insulin, the vial that we're, per vial charge, is very slightly marked up to ensure sustainability. As you know, I'm a scientist and I used to actually make proteins in the lab. You can probably throw a bunch of numbers around that don't take into account all the infrastructure and electricity and factory and all of that. Like I used to make protein in the lab and I could say, oh, this only cost me today $1 to make all of these proteins, where I'm in a lab that costs money to build, et cetera, and so forth. That's a long-winded way of saying the cost that this insulin is being sold at is, for all that it takes to do this, barely above cost.
Right. But I guess the question then would be, advocates for years have wanted that price, a better estimate, so that we could say publicly, it only costs this much and it's being priced at $300 a vial. Look at this. And they've tried to protect that as a trade secret.
Yeah,
I've been told many times.
When you speak to the Civica team, that's a good question for them.
Okay.
I think it's a little more complicated than people are making it out to be. And then, there's the whole debate about R&D costs. But let's be honest, R&D costs are real. And you could argue that after the patent has expired, how much amortization of those R&D costs are 20 years later. But I sure want to see better insulins in the future, and I would love to see a glucose-responsive insulin. So I think it's a great question for Civica. From a JDRF perspective, what we can say is, based upon all the costs rolling into making this happen, this is barely above cost.
It's interesting, and I appreciate your candor on that. Talk to me a little bit, and I want to ask you some other JDRF questions, but before I let go of this one, let's talk a little bit about exactly what this insulin is from Civica, because we've heard a lot in the last few years about newer types. This is a substitute or a one-to-one, I would say, for Humalog, Novolog, and Lantus, right? We're not talking about Fiasp or any of the quote, faster, newer insulins.
Right. And that's important. So these are biosimilar versions of Novolog, Humalog, and Lantus. Those are all off patent. And we are not intending to make on-patent drugs. I mean, that's what the companies do. And I think one of the questions I've got from folks is, will this slow down innovation for, say, a smart insulin? And my hope is it'll actually accelerate innovation, and that better insulins like Fiasp or Tresiba or you name it will continue to be developed and improve. Just like when I started diabetes, we used cow and pig insulin. Nobody wants to go back. Or, my other anecdote about, you mentioned breaking a bottle. I forgot insulin on a trip I was on a couple of years ago, and I refused to pay the $300. And I said, I'm just going to go to Walmart and buy human insulin and human regular. I did. I paid, I don't know, $25 or something. You don't need a prescription. But it's, that insulin peaks in like 3 hours. I used to do it. I did it for a lot of my life, but it's not something that we want to go to. So I think many people currently use Humalog, Novolog, and Lantus, and these are good analog insulins. We, JDRF, will continue to support next gen as we drive towards cures. We still want to focus on better treatments as well. And if they're on patent, companies should be able to have premium pricing. So, that's kind of the distinguishing factor here is the newer drugs are still on patent, and the companies should be able to charge what they charge for them.
Let me ask you a couple of quick questions about other things that JDRF is involved with. Lots and lots of news, big headlines, big regular media, mainstream media articles about stem cell research in the last couple of months with Vertex and Cernova and ViaCyte. I don't want to ask you to give a JDRF research update. I know we don't have time for that. But this has been going on for a very long time. It looks like, again, and as you listen, this is still well in the future. But this is more news in the last year than I've heard in a long time, Aaron.
Yeah, I fully believe that I will take off my pump, and I believe it's sooner than many people anticipate. And I know the diabetes folks out there will say, oh my God, I've been hearing 5 years around the corner for my entire life. Well, we know that you can cure diabetes with islet transplants. It's been going on for over 20 years, but that's just not a sustainable way to do it. There's not enough organ donors. It requires immunosuppression. Well, now we can make stem cell derived islets. And these studies that people are reading about in the New York Times and seeing on Good Morning America are working. These cells are making insulin. So this is not pie in the sky. This is not cartoon stuff. This is real. It's happening across the board. Multiple companies working on it. JDRF has, over probably 50 different projects working on this right now, and many human trials going on. So I am incredibly excited about this. It's one of the things I love talking about. We'll have to do another call sometime soon because it's real. And you're going to see clinical trials popping up more and more and more, whether it's Vertex, ViaCyte, Cernova, Novo Nordisk, others. It's happening.
I hesitate to wade into any politics because people tend to hear what they want to hear these days. But pricing of insulin, capping the cost for those who are insured has certainly been a big topic recently. We saw at the State of the Union not too long ago, JDRF representative. It was a feel-good story for a lot of people to see that young man at the State of the Union. But where do we stand right now? Do you think this is going to get passed?
Well, our advocates, the JDRF advocates, are one of the most incredible forces on Capitol Hill. I'm always so proud when I'm up on the Hill. And the Davis family, who we saw in the State of the Union address, are an example of that. Advocates who have been making their voices heard on Capitol Hill. The challenge, as we all know, is things are moving glacially through Congress right now. There are a lot of competing priorities, and there's a lot of fighting between R's and D's, as we say inside the Beltway. So we will continue to advocate. This is something that, I think these different initiatives are not mutually exclusive. Having better policies that cap out pocket costs are hugely important to us. Our advocates around the country are continuing to contact their members of Congress in support of these proposals. Again, this would provide a monthly cap of $35 per month, which is, like you said earlier, less than what we're talking about per vial here with Civica. Both are really important. Now, the challenge, I think, in some of the legislation on the Hill is it doesn't address the uninsured and underinsured people. Right. So hence, we need to fight this fight on multiple fronts. We will continue to work with members of Congress. The good news is, while I talk about going back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, diabetes is a bipartisan issue. And we will work with both sides of the aisle. We have great support on both sides of the aisle, great champions on both sides. And hopefully, as we see things start to move through Congress, we'll see legislation that helps our loved ones with diabetes see affordable insulin covered.
I got to tell you, Aaron, I do not understand. To me, this just shows the power of lobbying in D.C. because you talk about a bipartisan issue. Everybody wants lower drug prices. Everybody wants lower insulin prices. And it's amazing that they can't get it done under any president, right? It doesn't seem to matter who's in office. This is something that they can't seem to get done when they know people want it. And the cynic in me, and most of us would say this is all about money from lobbyists. I mean, how do we get around that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of money in lobbyists all over DC, but we can still make significant progress, and we have. And I would not say that we think this is untenable or unsolvable. I'm sure that as we get some movement in Congress that we will be able to cross this bridge. It's just really hard right now with all the competing priorities to see bills move through Congress. So I think it is easy these days to be down on progress with Congress, but we have an incredible, every member of the diabetes community is passionate about our cause. And I and my family and many folks like you and your family, will continue to make our voices heard. And I will not give up on this issue, nor will our constituents.
I appreciate that. I really do. Let's talk about JDRF for a minute, because the last time we spoke, I think, was at the very end of 2020 or the very beginning of 2021, before vaccines, when we knew there would be no in-person events for the following year, when a lot of chapters had reorganized. Very tough time for JDRF. How are things looking these days? And I'll just interject by saying my chapter has 3 events coming up. They're outside, right? But we're getting together again. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's I feel like we're seeing some light at the end of the COVID tunnel. I know every time we say that, it's kind of 2 steps up and 1 back, but the organization is doing great. Diabetes hasn't gone away, as we all know, and people are passionate to see progress. I've been out and about. I was in Houston. I was in Hartford recently. I've been in Florida. And the story is the same everywhere. People are appreciative of the progress we've made. I'm wearing a hybrid closed loop system. My brother is. We've seen all of the stories about cell therapy, about teplizumab. There's never been a better time to talk about the progress in diabetes research. And what I say is we got to put the pedal to the metal. And hence continue to raise support, get more people involved, and fund more research. There's an anxiousness, there's a kind of an energy, like you said, to get out and about. And I'm so appreciative of that because the opportunity exists to deliver cures to our loved one. There's no doubt in my mind. It's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. And that's what the organization is. That's our North Star. We're going to keep doing things to keep people healthy until then. But we're doing well. Everybody's excited about the progress that's going on. And I'm appreciative of folks like you and the folks in Charlotte and North Carolina and all over the country who are continuing to support us in the research we're funding.
As I said, the chapter's reorganized. Some states have 1 chapter now where they had a few more. I'm curious what your message would be for people who are calling their JDRF office now, asking about events that are coming up and maybe they're not happening because the staffing is different or, they're not working with the same outreach person that they were. Are you looking for more local volunteers to fill those gaps? Are you looking to, reorganize as the years go on? What would you tell people who are just now realizing like, oh, my local chapter was Charlotte. Now it's North Carolina.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point, and I'll give you kind of where we are. My goal as CEO of JDRF is not to engage less people, it's to engage many more people. It's just to do it as efficiently as possible. Anybody who gives money to JDRF, I ask my parents for money, my wife and I do it, my brother raises money for us, my siblings. want the most dollars to go to research and advocacy and policies that accelerate life-changing breakthroughs. And I call it a little bit of going back to the future, being even more volunteer-powered. Being engaged in our communities doesn't necessarily always mean having a brick and mortar JDRF location. We've seen that with COVID. We do a lot of things via Zoom now. And I'm a believer. I live in New Jersey. We used to have 4 chapters in New Jersey, 4 offices, 4 leases, some redundancies in our teams. And we consolidated that to 1 chapter. It's not like we got out of different neighborhoods in New Jersey. We're actually trying to do more. And I think it's really important that we're not leaving geographies. What we're trying to do is just be more efficient, be more volunteer powered. And we're actually hiring more people right now, but I think they'll just be distributed and working more from home offices. So it's a time of transition, but the goal of mine and our board, accelerating life-changing breakthroughs and making sure as many pennies on the dollar as possible from an already efficient organization are going to the mission.
Before I let you go, several years ago, you and me and Thom Scher, who we lost, the former CEO of Beyond Type 1, we had, and I say this with respect, I know, we lost Thom and we miss him very much, but we had a very funny conversation. This was about the merging of JDRF and Beyond Type 1. And that wasn't the funny part, although you guys were really great together. The funny part was I was trying to hint around about what's going to happen to Jerry the bear, because there already was a Rufus the bear. And Thom was sort of dancing around it, saying, trying to be delicate. Well, we have all these cute animals. And you just busted in with, there's only going to be 1 bear. We can't have redundancies. And lo and behold, this year, we have the new and improved Rufus, who took the high-tech components of Jerry and I don't know what you'd call with Rufus, like the tried and true, right, known quantity. I have only seen people love this. And I'm curious, I know this is such a tiny thing, but I got to tell you, for kids, it's a big deal. How's it going over?
Well, it's gone over really well. And Thom was an amazing friend. I was with him on a day before he passed, and it's just still a shock to me, and I can't believe he's gone. But I think the relationship between he and me and the team at Beyond Type 1 and our team, where we landed, is a testament to us all wanting the same thing, which is to help our community and do that as efficiently as possible. And again, avoid redundancy. So that's something we talked about and we have the alliance with Beyond Type 1. It continues, it's strong, that let's do what we do well and not overlap and duplicate. And that's something that I talk a lot to David Panzera at the Helmsley Trust about, the team at ADA. So now we have 1 bear out in the community. There's less confusion. And it's great. And that bear is meaningful to families who are newly diagnosed. And I'm proud of where we landed. I know the chair of the board at Beyond Type 1, Nate Checketts, he and I talked a lot about this with Thom. It's just, let's all row in the same direction is always my kind of thing. And JDRF does some things well, others do other things well. Let's just get on board and do them together. And this is a good example of that going right.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you spending so much time with us. I think this is so exciting. I'm fingers crossed to me that it comes to market exactly as planned. But as you said, this isn't the first time around for these folks. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But thank you for spending some time with me.
Stacey, you're the best. You're an amazing champion. I am always honored to be on with you. And this is an exciting area, and I can't wait to see the initiative drive forward.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
More information about Civica, about this plan, and about JDRF's involvement, and some other information about the research that Aaron talked about there towards the end over at diabetes-connections.com on the episode homepage. I will also link up that interview that I referenced with Thom Scher and Aaron that we did in 2019. The last time I talked to Thom was actually all about insulin and affordability and access. And I'll link that up too, just to make sure that you know Beyond Type 1 has a website, getinsulin.org, where you can find out about coupons and all of that. You put in your information or what you're looking for, and it really kind of is a clearinghouse to help you navigate through all the different manufacturer coupons programs. So a lot of good information out there, but obviously enough is not being done. So we'll see what happens here. I'm really optimistic about this, but I'm also really curious. And you've heard me ask a lot of questions there that Aaron couldn't give me, the definitive answer for, because I think that that's something that Civica will have to do. So I'll follow up on that. Make sure you're in the Facebook group, because when we get Civica on the show, I will make sure to ask for questions, as I usually do, and you can chime in on that. Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. Dexcom has a diabetes management software called Clarity. Do you use this? For a very long time, longer than I'd like to admit, I thought it was something just our endo could use. But it's really helpful. I have it on my phone now, and you can use it on the desktop or as an app. It's an easy way to keep track of the big picture. I find I use it when we're adjusting things. Boy, for a couple of years there, I feel like we were adjusting things all the time. Benny is 17, and it seems like things have leveled off a bit, at least for now. But Clarity really helps us see long-term trends and helps us not overreact. The overlay reports help put context to Benny's glucose levels and patterns. And when you share the reports with your care team, it's easy for them to get a great idea of what's going on and how they can better help. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the very best CGM systems working for us. Find out more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Before I let you go, just a quick calendar note. There will be no change on these long format weekly episodes. Every Tuesday we release what I call long format, where you're doing the interview. You're the kind of podcast episode I've been doing for years and years. And then on Fridays, I release the In the News episodes. These are between 5 and 7 minutes. They're very quick. I do them on social media as video first. You may not be aware if you only listen. They're live on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. So all of that to say, there may be some changes in the News episodes, because I'm doing some traveling in the next couple of weeks, personal stuff, and I may not do the video component. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I'm still planning on doing the podcast version of the newscast. I'm excited to see how popular that's become, so thank you for listening. I wasn't sure if 2 episodes a week was too much, but it's going great. So just a bit of a calendar note there. I don't know about you, but I'm still kind of careful, and we're being cautious and cautiously optimistic about COVID, but my calendar has gotten really busy, even with virtual stuff, over the next 2 to 3 months. So fingers crossed that we can get to it and we stay healthy and, we stay smart. Well, that'll do it. Thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.